Hi guys, thank you for your time. I'm just going to give it another couple of minutes. We've got quite a few people booked in on this one. I hopefully won't take too long to go through everything. What we can do in the meantime, if you do have any questions that happen or come up throughout, then please just feel free to click on the Q&A section and pop it in there. If you want to pop it in the chat as well, don't worry. My colleague Lynn's around, so we're going to collate all those and we'll deal with any questions at the end. But if I give it another couple of minutes, because I've still got people joining, and then we'll make a start. Okay, so that looks like everyone's here. So thank you all very much. Um, Just to start us off, my name's Joe. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Liquid Friday. I think most of you probably know me by now. I've sort of been in the industry now for coming up to 13 years. We've seen lots of these budgets. I think this was obviously one of the more punchy ones, should we say. But what I'll do is we'll make a start. I really hope this shouldn't take very long. I'm very conscious it's lunchtime for a lot of people. So I'm going to try and make this sort of no more than sort of 30 minutes if we can. If anyone has any questions, as I say, please do not hesitate to put them in the Q&A section or in the chat, and we'll pick those up at the end. So we definitely had a chance. There were plenty to say. It was a very, very long budget, running in at 77 minutes. So a nice little stat there. Longer than any of her predecessors, but I think she had a lot more to say. The big headline, which I think a lot of people were quite surprised with, was obviously the £40 billion tax grab. We're all very, very conscious and aware of the 20 billion black coal, but a 40 billion tax grab was larger than I think a lot of people were expecting. What I want to look at in this session, I'm sure we've been on loads of these already, but we're looking at the realities behind the numbers that really going to impact our industry, as in the recruitment space and the contracting world. And then we'll have a very brief discussion at the end regarding the announcement regarding umbrella regulation and to help clean up the market. But just to start us off, a quick rundown of the headline, shall we say? Um, Big one really, national insurance. So employers' national insurance increasing by 1.2%, and that brings it back up to 15%. And I think it's important to recognise the kind of stealth tax, if you want to put it that way, really, is that they are almost halving the annual allowance. So that's gone from 9,100 to 5,000 annually, and that's of your employees' income. That's going to have a real substantial impact on everybody's budgets, even more so than the 1.2%. So where you would have been budgeting previously that the first £9,100 of income that you pay to an employee was going to be free of national insurance, that's now been halved really to £5,000. So you're going to be paying 15% on anything over 5,000. National living wage, a really big jump, much bigger than actually the low pay commission anticipated. And that's taken a real big hit, I think, on those kind of businesses that operate in this space. The employment allowance raised from 5,000 to 10,500. That's to really protect and ensure that there's an exemption from those small employers, and to kind of soften the blow really of the first one. Income tax thresholds, they're not going, well, so they will now be rising from 2028, rather than remaining frozen. I think that is a good news. I think a lot can happen between now and then, so let's hold our breath on that one. But yeah, to nearly go almost a decade without any type of movement in that area is quite abnormal. And then personally, I was quite surprised at the capital gains tax moving so sort of little. I thought there'd be a lot more to gain. Obviously, someone paid a lot more than me. Obviously, thinks otherwise. But yeah, they're moving the capital gains tax from 10% for lower rate taxpayers to 18, and the higher rate from 20 to 24. So there is movement there, but I think quite a lot of people were surprised it only really went to 24. Inheritance tax, obviously loads in the press around this, around the farmers and that sort of thing. But yeah, inheritance tax thresholds frozen, and I think a lot more revenue is going to be found in that space, in my opinion. The triple lock, government is maintaining it. I think that was maybe a bit of a given, and pensions will rise by 4.1%, in line with the earnings growth. Obviously the normal cheer and happy for the fuel and alcohol duties to sort of remain in place or reduce. And then the big wins where the money was spent was obviously NHS funding, an additional 22.6 billion boost in the day-to-day budget. I think just from a contracting point of view, that's not bad. That means the healthcare, as the NHS has got more money to spend on healthcare, and let's hope that obviously they will be utilising agency resource and workforce to implement these changes. And ultimately, public spending and growth forecasts, I think we're pretty much, just breaking out of stagnant, really, aren't we, into 1.7%. So, I think, it's in there. There's got to be lots of efficiencies found, which the government have been quite honest about. But we are hoping to see the economy start to grow again. So just to focus in really on the stuff that affects us and our space in particular. Early this year, the Low Pay Commission, they're the guys who are set by government to set minimum wages, said it should increase by 5.8. And on this one, the government took that and extended it further. So national living wage for people over the age of 21 is going to rise from 6% to 11.44 to £12.21. So that's quite a substantial jump again. Also quite telling in there, the government were really hoping to remove the age brackets. I think that is something they're committed to, and that is something we all need to be very aware of, but they haven't done it now. And for somebody that is on national minimum wage, that's working the 37.5 hours or full-time week, that's going to equate to a salary of £23,873. So there's quite a big jump there for those people. And then we've pop on there the rates for the other age gaps as well. So what's the impact on PAYE umbrella rates? Well, it's kind of a double whammy, really. This is still quite a big increase in national minimum wage, but something else to sort of lob into here is the fact that obviously that national insurance is changing for employers NI, and when we're calculating our umbrella rates, which you guys are then quite rightly in the agency world using to calculate your charge out rates to your clients, it is going to be quite a punchy one this year. We are really working hard on crunching the numbers, and we've got some guide, some very broad numbers at the moment, but we are still waiting for some key information, mainly around pensions and pension thresholds. Once we have those, we will be able to lock down the numbers. But if people do want a kind of a ballpark, that is something that we are now in a position to provide. So the biggie, this was the one I think hurt more than people expected. I think we was all expecting a percentage increase or something to go up in employers' NI. I personally was not expecting that the threshold be reduced so dramatically. So that does mean there's going to be a substantial amount raised through this tax. So an additional there 25 billion will be coming from UK businesses. So I think it's fair to say hasn't gone down well with businesses, and it is going to disproportionately affect agency workers and umbrella workers because these costs are obviously all calculated within our rates. So what we really encourage agencies to do is get ahead of that, start speaking with clients and make sure they are aware that there is going to be an uplift coming. I know that most of you have it within contractual terms that this is just what it is, and there will be an increase. But I know you obviously you would want to get in there and mitigate any type of negativity that can come from this. So, yeah. Once again, our rates will be available imminently. If you do want a bit of a broad stroke rate, we can give you a ballpark, but we are working with Treasury to really confirm what's going on with those pension thresholds. Okay, clamping down on tax avoidance. This was a unexpected, I think, to say the least, from our space, from our side of the desk in the umbrella world, but very, very welcomed. So we've been working with government now for years to try and get some sort of tax avoidance, some sort of regulation within our space. Those of you on this call work with Liquid Friday, therefore you're going to be completely unaffected by any of this stuff. But ultimately, this is a real good news story. So the Chancellor, although it wasn't necessarily part of her a speech in as much detail, then released a document where it says there that where an agency chooses to outsource operation of payroll to the umbrella company that employs the worker they are supplying, PAYE will be operated by the umbrella company on behalf of the agency. The agency will be liable for any shortfall. Now, what they're getting at here is how did we take the risk of loss PAYE and national insurance that frankly people have either going via dodgy umbrella companies or mini umbrella companies or offshore entities, or they start to look at self-employed models that are completely inappropriate. Well, what the government are saying is, look, if there is a shortfall, i.e. the umbrella company that an agency has actually worked with fails to pay the relevant tax and national insurance to HMRC, there will be a third-party debt transfer. Now, once again, for all of you guys who work with companies like us and other FCSA members and other established businesses, that's not a problem for you guys. We are able to report, and we do report regularly on our PAYE status basically, or our national insurance status. You don't have any risk there. Where there is risk is where we have undercutting through dodgy schemes or offshore models or whatever it might be. Or the worst case scenario, an umbrella that just fails to pay the payaway and national insurance over and then decides to go pop. We're really supportive of this. There'll be lots to go on about this. It doesn't take effect for 2026. We've got a year to 18 months to kind of all get our heads around this. But there are some real simple things that you as an agency can do to mitigate that risk almost to zero. And we will discuss those towards the end. But it's nothing to really be that scared about because we've done this before. So anyone that works within self-employment or the construction industry scheme, we had the full self-employment legislation several years ago, 10 plus years ago, whereby any tax liability that occurred due to incorrect determination of tax status was actually borne by the agency or intermediary one, not the payroll entity, the entity that's paying. So what they've done is they've taken existing legislation that we've all worked with for the last decade or so, and they are now applying that to umbrella. So once again, completely happy. We're very supportive of it. We will be working with our agencies really closely to make sure you're as safe as possible. But there are some pretty simple things that you guys can all do now to get ready for 2026, and I would encourage you to do so. So people have often, and I think I've been quite vocal in this area. We've needed regulation in our space for a long time. Um, it's almost impossible for an umbrella company to deliver its services for anything really less than margins of 15 to 18 pounds a week. And those that do, I think, you need to have a look at that and see how they're delivering that. This is regulation through the back door. So on the call that was had shortly afterwards with HMRC, Treasury, FCSA, and some large umbrellas, there was conversations around, we were not going to go into consultation on this one. We've had the consultation. This is the outcome, and that's absolutely not, not a problem. But it is definitely happening. We now have a date, and that is very, very positive. So there are lots of non-compliant practices you guys need to be aware of within your supply chains. We've been educating our supply chain for years. But with the increase in the employment allowance within the budget, that is the allowance that something called a mini umbrella uses to basically defraud HMRC of the national insurance that it's entitled to. That increase in employment allowance is not helpful when you're trying to combat mini umbrella, because that is the mechanism they use to increase pay. So what that is, just so you know, the employment allowance is the amount of money that an employer has to spend on an individual or on its employees before national insurance actually even is taken into account. Well, them doubling that means that there's going to be a lot more tax-free money to pay out to a worker, and makes mini umbrella much, much more attractive. However, HMRC have been very, very honest and very open about mini umbrella in recent spotlights. It is a loophole. It is a known loophole, and it is one they are targeting. So if anybody is working, and I would say this is, unfortunately, it's quite widespread, working with mini umbrellas, now be aware that if HMRC, and when HMRC do look into that mini umbrella and say, no, we're going to look through the fact that these are not genuine companies, they are not, they are linked, therefore you should not be having multiple employment allowances, and that entity decides that's been managing all those businesses, decides it's not worth their battle, HMRC will now go direct to the agency. If you have a really strong PSL and ASL that has no mini umbrella or none of these, so I'm trying to be very polite, but these entities and these practices that are dubious, you've got absolutely nothing to worry about. So if you work with just FCSA umbrella companies, or you work just with Liquid Friday, you're completely fine. So it's a massive win for compliant businesses, and that was one of the big aims from HMRC and Treasury. That one of their big aims was to recognise the good work from entities like the FCSA and umbrella companies that have always done the right thing, to make sure it's a level playing field. They recognise that it's not. So please, it's a massive win. It's all about due diligence and making sure that everybody's safe, but make sure your PSLs, your ASLs are very, very strict, and do not grow based on maybe a contractor's demand, because now, unfortunately, with this legislation, the agency is going to be in the firing line for any lost money. So away from the budget, what's happened? Well, quite a bit actually. October has been a bit of a hotbed of legislation changes. So the government has launched consultations. I've got actually 5 that I need to look at and will be writing responses to. But 0-hour contracts, SSP changes, there are collective redundancies, either fire and rehire. That's something that we really need to get under the bonnet of in our space, because we don't want to be an unintended consequence of legislation that's not actually designed to combat, which is a genuine, end of assignment, start of an assignment, break. We need to make sure that we've got that locked down. And they're changing trade union law. So there are lots of further consultations going on. And I think really this next sort of year to 3 years is going to be another fundamental shift within recruitment. So we'll be working really closely with you all, and we'll prepare you with all forthcoming changes. We are always at the forefront and working with government at Liquid Friday to really help. We pull as many levers as we can, whether that's through connections we have within government, within the civil service. We will always make sure that you guys are kept right at the forefront and know what's coming. So I was asked to wrap up my sort of personal thoughts. It's a sea change. What we're seeing now is a government that is redefining the economy. That's pretty clear from the conversations that we had with the teams from Angela Rayner, and yeah, this is a sea change. That we want a move substantially back to individuals rather than business, and I think that's not abnormal with a Labour government. Big difference is Labour want to do this, and they are listening. So they are working with entities such as the FCSA. They are working with the REC to make sure that businesses' voice is not completely drowned out. So I think let's take this budget as a kind of sometimes it felt as a business leader that it was a bit of a punching bag. I think we need to accept it. It's happened. They needed to build the revenue. They got it from businesses. That's what they chose to do. Moving forward, they want to work much closer to business. So just to really get it, under the bonnet of the umbrella regulation or the umbrella legislation that will be coming, it's extremely welcomed. Okay, so I've already had lots of agency clients contact me, some very, very large PLCs to obviously, smaller one-man bands. What can they do? Well, first of all, we have got sort of about 18 months to figure this out. Based on what is currently written, which is a bit of a guidance note, but it's definitely a sounding, very clear announcement from HMRC and Treasury what they want to do. You need to make sure you're partnering with trusted, financially secure umbrella companies that take their responsibility seriously and demonstrate their compliance. So the reason I've underlined the financially secure thing is because there is absolutely nothing in this legislation, like there is of other pieces of legislation like R35, to say if the agency have been lied to, there won't be a debt transfer, or if the agency had done a bit of due diligence, then that gives them a kind of out for third-party debt transfer. So if you are working with an umbrella company that was genuinely paying its POA national insurance and you did your due diligence, but the business failed for whatever reason and they were left owing money to HMRC. HMRC, on the way it's currently written, appear to have the right to go up the supply chain for that missed money. There's nothing about saying that the inability or the inability for the umbrella company to pay its POA and NICs needs to be nefarious in order for them to go up the supply chain. If they just fail as a business, and businesses do fail, then they will be able to come out of that supply chain. So there's very, very few, and we probably deal with 5, 6, sometimes 10 PSL reviews a week here at Liquid Friday. I would be able to probably count on my hand the amount of time as anyone has ever actually looked at our financial security. So make sure that does form part of any due diligence you do, and we can talk you through what that should look like, and maybe some red herrings and some flags that might be there if you're concerned. But ultimately, we've got a really action-packed few years ahead, and we're going to be here to help you navigate. So what I thought I'd do is give you 3 kind of things that if I was sitting in your shoes and I owned an agency at the moment, and I kind of, this was all news to me. Well, outside of sorting out, our own budgets, and we need to look at our internal staff and costings, we need to manage expectations that charge out rates are going to go up. Okay, payment rates are going to increase. There is nowhere near enough fat in anybody's margins to compensate for the national insurance changes, as well as the national minimum wage increases. And then secondly, I would review and create a very strict umbrella PSL and ASL and partner with just a handful. You don't want 15 umbrella companies on a PSL that you're ultimately at risk for. So make sure you're partnering with those financially secure, trusted umbrellas. Obviously, I'd love for us to be one. We are with most of you, but please, make sure that you're creating a strict PSL. And what I mean by that is you don't have an ASL and a PSL where it's that 99% of the time, but there was a candidate that really, really demanded to use a certain company, and that company, you know, for all you know, is not paying them correctly. You're now liable. And then take a deep breath, finish your Liquid Friday Advent calendars, which will be out, I think, in the coming weeks, and enjoy Christmas. So we've got, we've got 18 months to deal with the umbrella stuff, but we do have only a few months to really deal with these new charge out rates and the increases in national insurance and national minimum wage. So that's me. I'm just going to turn and see if we have any questions. Yeah, so we only had so we've got a comment at the moment. Yeah, they're finally going after dodgy umbrellas. That is it. It's not going to particularly take long for them to implement this, guys. Remember as well, for years we've all been doing agency reporting, which obviously your umbrella provides to you. It really does not take the systems very long to pick up on the same national insurance number. So one of the questions I've been asked is, well, how would HMRC even know that I'm in the supply chain? Well, you're on our RTI, you're on our reporting, you're going to be on a reporting somewhere, and you're already providing agency reporting and agency intermediaries reporting up to HMRC. So they do know who these people are. They do know they're connected to that agency. That will be where they go. That'll be their first port of call. Okay. If there's any other questions, feel free to send them through. If not, I hope you have a fantastic week. We will be in contact. We will issue out a kind of breakdown of this, and the call recording will be available. But I want to thank you all very, very much. And I will speak to you soon. Thank you.